Welcome back to our deck building roguelike card game tutorial series in Unity. Today we're going to be focusing on the movement of the card itself using a state machine. And in the description below you can find a link to a couple of the assets we'll be using today, which is a blank card kind of highlight thing, and as well as a script that I like to use to troubleshoot and test out movement of UI elements. And yeah, let's go ahead and hop right into it. So first things first, let's go ahead and drag in our UI object drag script. And then let's go to our, after it finishes compiling, let's go to our sprites script, or our sprites folder, excuse me, and drag our card highlight into there. And then let's click on this, and we're going to change our PPU to 256. And then we'll hit save after you click off of it. And then now we need to jump into editing our card prefab. Inside of our card prefab, we just need to make a few quick changes. So double click on that to open that up. The very first thing is that in our root we need changes from a transform to a rect transform. And so in order to do that, click down here, rect transform. And what this does is it allows us to interact it more easily within a canvas. And we actually have a few things we need to change inside of this rect transform. First, we need to set our width to 2.5 by 3.5. And then we also need to add a box collider 2D. And we're going to set our size to 2.5 by 3.5. If you're wondering what this change looks like, we can click over on our scene. You can see we've got our box collider in there. One problem that we have right now is that our little image and everything is kind of off-center. So let's jump into our card canvas, and we will set its position to 1.25 by 1.75. And, well, actually, instead of doing that, we can just change this to center. And there we go. It should be position 0, 0 if you change it to center. And that's what this does right here. It sets our pivoting for transforming. And yeah, it's pretty useful for different objects. We'll see it in our next video where we go over how to make a dynamic pointing arrow. And we will have to use that on one of our objects in there. Alright, so we finished with that. Next, let's go to our card canvas, right-click, UI, image. And we're going to name this image card highlight. And we're going to change this sprite to our card highlight sprite. Finally, we will change its width and height to 2.7 by 3.7. And then finally, we want to make sure that it is above our card image, so I'll make it show up behind. Next, we need to go into here and set our colors and highlights for it. Remember how I said before, I want to make sure that most of my assets are white so I can change their colors as needed. We might want to, in the future, change the color of this highlight depending upon different situations. Like Slay the Spire, for instance, has a thing where when you hover over a card, it's blue. Whenever, it's the opportune time to play it, it'll glow gold. Things like that. Alright, so I want to, inside this RGB, I've got it set from 0 to 1.0. So in these colors, I will set this to 0, 0.9, 1, and then finally 0.6 on the opacity. And I think that gives it a very nice highlight color. So now I'm going to disable it because we don't want it on all the time. We only want it on in certain situations. Okay, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into our scene here. I'm going to click on our canvas. And before we change the scale of screen size stuff, I'm actually going to change it to expand, because I think that's going to work better for our project in general. So now let's jump into editing our scripts a little bit. We're going to go into our Hand Manager script. We'll come down to our update section, and we're just going to do // to comment out this section. We might want it later, but right now we don't. So I'm just going to comment it out. And then I'm going to save. Now, usually if you're not going to use something, you want to delete it. You know, no reason to keep it on there. But I'm just commenting it out because I think I might use it later. I'm not sure yet. Next, I'm going to let it recompile. Oh, I forgot to hit stop. I'm going to jump into my Deck Manager script. And inside of our start method, I want to, by default, draw some cards. And so first thing I gotta do is I gotta find my Hand Manager inside the scene. So Hand Manager, hand equals find object of type. Find object of type. And then want it to be Hand Manager. Okay. And then we want for int I equals 0. I is less than 6. And then I plus plus. So this is just our basic for loop. If you don't know what a for loop is, it is detailed inside of our 10 things a beginner should know about coding in Unity video, which I will add a little card for right here. Let's do, and then inside of here we want to call our draw card function, which we have detailed just below. And it asks for a Hand Manager, so that's where we're going to put in the hand. And then we will go ahead and save this. And then we're going to, on our card prefab, let it recompile, of course. On our card prefab, we're going to jump in here, we're going to add component, we're going to add that DragUI object. You don't need to change the movement sensitivity, that's just a debug thing I have on there for other projects. And then we can go back into our scene, expand this so I can get a better look at it over on the side. Then we're going to hit play. And here we see we drew a bunch of cards, and then I can click on them and drag them around. Now, I said before that this is a debug script, so you can look inside of our console here, and it's telling me the position of everything and where everything's going to, and things like that. So this is a useful script to debug things when things are not moving when they should be moving. That's the whole purpose of it. You can see here that this is very basic. You know, I'm dragging this thing around, and it's not resetting to its original position. It's even keeping its rotation. It's not very dynamic at all. You know, we can click on our Deck Manager, though. We can hit Draw Next Card. It'll pop it back down there. But, you know, it's not really super dynamic. And it doesn't look super good either, I don't think. So we're going to make a special movement script for this project. In our script, we're going to create C# script, and I'm going to name this CardMovement. Alright, so we're going to have a lot of stuff going on in here. So the first thing we want to take care of is our inheritance. And I talk a little bit about inheritance again, and that 10 things beginners should know about coding in Unity. We want to use our event system. So first thing, when you come up here, go to using Unity engine dot event systems. Okay, and then in here, do comma I drag handler, comma I pointer down handler, I pointer enter handler, and I think there's one more. I'm trying to remember. Yes, I pointer exit handler. So you may be wondering why, looking at this script, I'm getting some red squigglies underneath here. And this is just because I am inheriting from these objects, but I'm not using them currently in our script, which, you know, duh, I haven't written anything yet. So we actually have a lot of information, a lot of variables in the script, because it's going to be a doozy. We've got a lot of stuff going on. The basics of this script is that we want to set up a state machine for our cards. And we want to have 4 different states. We want to have a default state, a hover over state, a drag state, and a play state. And so that's where these different inheritance is going to come from. So at the very beginning, well, first I'm going to go ahead and just delete those. We don't need them right now. So first we're going to do private rect transform, and then private canvas, and then private vector2 original local pointer position, private vector3 original panel local position. Yep, okay. And then private vector3 original scale. Private int current state. And then private quaternion, such a fun word, original rotation. And then finally a private vector3 original position. Alright, so we just went through and made a lot of variables, and to be honest with you, we're not done with our variables here, but this is just the start, and I want to go through them with you. So first off is we're getting the rect transform, and then our canvas. And these are just going to be the basic rect transform, basic canvas that we're using for our object here. We're actually going to be looking for the parent canvas of our object, and that's we're going to be looking for the rect transform of our current object down further. And then right here is where we're going to be storing our pointer position, which is going to be our mouse pointer. We're going to store our original location of this card, the original scale, our current state, which I messed up here, and I set this equal to 0. And then our original rotation, which we're storing our rotation in here, and then our original position, which we're storing our original position in here. Nothing's being stored right now. Obviously, we haven't written that part yet. But we want to continue on and write our next variables. Okay, so next things we want to write out is our serialized fields, which will be private but still show up. Private float select scale, and I'm going to set this to 1.1f. What this is for is it's going to set our scale when we're hovering over or selecting it. It just kind of adds a bit more of an effect to our card. But then, by the way, so when something is set private, it's not going to show up in the inspector when you're looking at an object that has this script attached to it. But if we set serialized field to private, it will show up in there. Also, if a variable is set to public, it will show up in the inspector as well. But you don't really want everything to be public. You just want things that you need to be public to be public. They might need to come back here and change a few of these in the future. But for right now, these are all going to be private because we don't need to reference them anywhere else. Serialized field. Private. Vector2. Card play. And then serialized field. Private. Vector3. Play position. Then serialized field. Private. Game object. Glow. Effect. And then serialized field. Private. Game object. Play. Arrow. Okay, so this is going to store our glow effect, which is why we have that new sprite. This is going to store our play position, which is where our card's going to jump to when we're trying to decide where to play our card. And then finally we have our card play, which is it's a position where if our mouse goes past it, it's going to push our card into our play position. That probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense while I'm trying to just tell you about it. So I will show you whenever we get to that point. So next we want to do a void awake. So that means that when this card or when this object is activated. And inside here we want a rect transform. It's going to equal our get component rect transform. So remember I told you we'll be storing our rect transform. This is where it's showing up at. Okay, so next we have canvas. Get components. Again, pretty much the same thing as before. Canvas. And there we go. So we're storing our canvas and our rect transform right here. Okay, and then next we're going to go to our original scale. And we're going to set it to our rect transform dot local scale. So this is just storing our original scale basically. Then original position equals rect transform dot local position, and then finally original rotation is going to equal our rect transform dot local rotation. So yeah, we're just storing our starting variables. So now we're going to go into our update method. Void updates. And I need to figure out how to change this preset. I really prefer to have my brackets below my methods. It's just a personal preference, though. Alright, so we're going to use a new section of code we haven't talked about yet, which is a switch. Now, this is best used when you have a variable to use to switch between different cases. Like, for instance, let's say you wanted to use something for our card names or card types, like, hey, if it's this type, I want to do this. Well, then you can make a switch with a case for each one of those types and have code that is executed based upon that type. It's, instead of using a crap ton of if statements, you can just use a switch with cases, and it's much more intuitive. And it looks better too. I love using cases. I think that they are super useful and fun to use. Alright, so what I am writing out here is I'm just writing out some logic that we'll be using down lower. So I'm going to be mentioning some methods that I don't actually have written out yet. But I will get to them in a moment. So this is the basic format for making a switch. So we have our switch, and then we have our current state, and then we have our case, and then the value that variable is set to. And then inside of here, we simply talk about what we want to do inside of that case, and then we end with a break, which basically says, okay, we've handled that case, we're done now. So now we're going to go to case 2, and this is going to be handle drag state and then break. Finally, case 3 handle play state and break. And I put a semicolon here, and this needs to be just a colon. So let's go into our case 2 right here, and we're going to add an if here. And now we're going to start referencing our event system and a few of our inherited methods. So if not input dot get mouse button 0. So this is basically just, check if mouse button is released. And if that is the case, then we want to transition to state 0, which is a method that we haven't written yet. And we want to do this in our case 3 as well. Alright, so I think we finished with our update here. Let's go ahead and start writing out our methods that we've been referencing. So inside of here, we're going to start with a private void transition to state 0. Dang it. I hate it whenever I do that. There we go. A little bit of my OCD coming back to haunt me. Current state could equal 0. And then our rect transform. So this is our default state, by the way. Our 0 state is our current state. And we want to set everything back to what it was before we made any changes to the card. So first we gotta put our local scale back to our original scale. Okay, and then we have our rect transform dot local rotation. We're going to set that back to our original rotation. And we will reset rotation. Okay, and then rect transform dot local position is going to equal original position. And reset position. Alright, so we've reset our basic variables here for our rect transform. So now, glow effect, set active to false. And this is just going to disable, scroll down so you can see better, disable our glow effect. And then our play arrow, set active to false as well. And this is going to disable play arrow. So the reason why we need to include this stuff here is because in some of our states we're going to be activating these things. And when we go back to our state 0, we gotta make sure we set everything back to default. So if they're activated, we're setting them to not active. Alright, so next we need to start setting up some of the logic for our states and when to go into them, when to change into them, things like that. So first we're going to do our public void on pointer enter. It's going to be pointer event data. Event data. Yay. And then we're going to do if our current state is equal to 0, then our current state is going to equal 1. Simple enough, right? Before we switch to our state of 1, we want to first just go ahead and reset our original position. We got to make sure it's set. Okay. And then our original rotation. And then our original scale. And there we go, we've got that set. Next, we're going to want to start working on our HandleHoverState. So now let's go ahead and handle the rest of state 1, case 1. And so we're going to use this function right here. private void HandleHoverState. And inside of here, we need to put, we need to turn on our glow effect. Set active to true. And then we want to set our scale we need to multiply it by our select scale variable. Alright, and that's what we have for our hover state. So now we need a way to get back out of state. So we need to do public void on pointer exit, and I'm going to put on here pointer event data. And inside of here we want to do if current state equal to our first state, then we want to set our current state equal to 0, and our TransitionToState method is called. Now I know that we're setting this here twice. Now that I think about it, we actually want to go ahead and let's just remove this because we want to keep it in this right here. Okay. So the next trigger that we need to have is public void on pointer down. And then inside here we're going to do the same thing we've been doing. And inside of here, we want to check our current state. And based upon that, we want to go ahead and set our current state equal to 2. And then we want to add a few additional pieces of logic inside of here. Rect transform utility dot screen point to local point in rectangle. Okay, and the rectangle we're looking at, canvas dot get components, and then inside of here we want rect transform, and close off that, and then we want event data dot position event data dot event data dot press event camera, and then the last bit of this is going to be out original local pointer position. I know it's a very long line of code. Yeah, this is what we're going to help make sure that we are getting the correct position in relation to the camera and the world. And then we want original panel local position. We set that equal to recTransform dot local position. All right, so after we do all of that, we now want to set our public void on drag and pointer event data and then event data. And then we're going to do if current state equal to 2, and then if, and we're basically going to copy most of our line that we have up here. So you can just go ahead and select it, paste it inside of here. But right here at the end, we're actually going to change this to a vector to local pointer position. So remember that's an if statement. All right, so if all of that is true, then inside of here we want to do local pointer position / equals canvas dot scale factor. Okay, and then right here we've got a vector 3 offset to original equals local pointer position minus original pointer position. So what we're getting right now is trying to make sure that we don't have, that we're adjusting for our camera position and for any parent offsets that we have. Basically, this is all to make sure that the card is actually following the mouse and not just following the mouse movement, if that makes sense. We want the card to go directly to where the mouse is at on the screen, but not just follow the mouse movement in relation to 0, 0, you know? So that's what all this is doing right here. Okay, and then we've got recTransform dot local position is going to equal original panel local position plus offset to original. So all this is just to make sure we can move our thing correctly. All right. And then finally, we have one more conditional inside of here. And going 3 deep on the ifs is not something I like to do. So it's really bad code to go like deeper and deeper inside of your conditional statements. There are better ways to do this, but I'm gonna be honest, I haven't had my coffee yet, so I'm struggling to remember the better way to do these if statements. So we're just going 3 deep because that's what's simple. But it's not the best practice, so I just want to say that here. This is not the best practice. If you look up a better way to do it, or I posted in the comments a better way to do this, please make that change. because you really want your code to look clean and easy to understand. The deeper your if statements get, the harder it is to understand what's going on inside of your code. Harder it is to look at a glance and say, oh, this is where I've made the mistake. But the deeper and deeper you get inside of here, the more difficult it's going to get. Alright, so local position dot y is greater than cardPlay dot y. So if you remember, we're setting cardPlay in the inspector, so that way whenever our card is dragged above that Y position, we can set our current state to 3, and we want to set our play arrow set active true, and then we want to jump our position of our card to our play position, which again we're setting in the inspector. Okay, so that's all the OnDrag event and all of the OnPointerDown event. Okay, but we still need to do a little bit more inside of our private void HandleDragState. And so the only thing we really need to do in here right now is to set the card's rotation to 0. So to do this, we just do recTransform local rotation, set it equal to quaternion, my favorite term, dot identity. We can set more logic inside of here if we need to in the future. So yeah, I think we will do some of that in the future, but this is how it is right now. The next state that we have. So we have a way to enter into our current state of 3, but we're not actually doing anything inside of that state quite yet. So that's why we want to go down here. We want to go to private void HandlePlayState. And inside of here, what we're doing is we want to make sure that we are sticking to that play position. We are having a rotation of 0. And if we drag back down below Y, that we revert back to our dragging state. So to do that, we just need to put recTransform local position equals play position. It should be pretty familiar. recTransform local rotation equals quaternion dot identity, and then finally we have if input dot mouse position dot y is less than cardPlay dot y. Then we want to revert back to our second state. And we want to set our play arrow to false. So I might not have fully described what this play arrow is going to be. So this play arrow is basically, it's going to be a game object in our scene that's going to enable us to have like a dynamic arrow draw to where we're wanting to play the card specifically. And I'll kind of be able to explain that more once we get into the game. So that's all that we have right here. Let's go ahead and save our script. And we don't need these namespaces up here. Let's go and delete those and save. And now let's jump back over to our game. We'll let it load. And then we want to go back to our prefabs. Let's double click on our card prefab here. And then we want to remove our basic drag script, and we want to put in our card movement script. And then let's go ahead and drag in our glow effect. And then let's go ahead and right click here. We want to make another empty. We're just going to name this play arrow. Disable it. And we're going to go back to our card prefab. We'll drag our play arrow into here. Okay. Let's go ahead and hit play. So you can see here we've got our 6 cards that are drawn out again. And I'm hovering over to them, and they are disappearing. So something's not going right. So I figured out what I did wrong. Let's go back into our script here. Let's take a look at this right here. Inside of our awake method, I put get components. But remember, I even specifically said I need to get the component of the parent canvas. And I just put in the wrong method here. Get component in parent. That's what we need to do here. And this should fix our issues. So let's save. Go back to the game. After compiling, let's hit play. Alright, now let's see what we got here. And they're still disappearing. So let's figure out what's going on even again. Let's take a deeper look. Okay, so once again, I figured out what I did wrong. Inside of our card prefab, I set card canvas by mistake as the glow effect. I meant to set card highlight. Explains also why we weren't getting the highlight. So, oops. Alright. That one should work. Hey, and we're getting our glow effect now, too. We weren't getting that before. And they're not disappearing. Look at that. Awesome. Now, we do have a little bit of a problem of our positioning is a little off. So let's try and figure out what the right positioning is. So let's just kind of look at our card prefab clone right here. This is our middle one. So let's put our card play position, let's say 400. And then no, you don't like that? No, it doesn't like that. Okay. Let's figure this out. Let's just set our card play position. Say -600, 500. This is on this one, right? I guess it's just not liking me making those changes while it's paused. So let's go into our card prefab, or while it's playing, sorry. And let's just set this to 400. You know what, that might be too much. Let's set it to 400. 400. Alright, and then this should allow us better control over it. Yep, see, now we can pick it up. As soon as we go up too high, it's going to pop over to this side. Now, it's looking better, but that's not as far over as I would like it. Because I plan to have like a card field, like out here, you know? So I want it to be out of the way as much as possible. So I think I'm going to make it pop over way to this side. So to do that, I'm going to jump back here in the card prefab. I'm going to set this to negative 600. I'm going to change this because it wasn't quite in the center. Put it to 500. Alright. And there you go. Now it's popping over to this side. And so imagine that we have basically like an arcing arrow that will follow our mouse according to the position that we want. And you know, so we can have better control of precisely where we want to play this card at. And kind of get a better idea of where we're going to be placing this card. And then, you know, whenever I release, it's going to pop back down. And there we have it. We have some pretty good card movement going on here. If you have any questions about this, just let me know. And you can hop into the Discord and we can talk about it there. I know that this is one of the more complicated things we've done so far. It is definitely the longest script that we've done so far. But it's got a lot of good things going on here. I think that one thing... Okay, so let's go and talk about our homework next. So one thing that really creates smooth and really good looking, good feeling movement for objects when you're dragging them around is something, it's called, what is it? Linear interpolation. And it is represented in Unity by kind of like shortening it to LERP, L-E-R-P. And so what it does is it basically allows something to move over time. Instead of it happening instantly, it happens over time. And it kind of makes things, instead of being super jumpy, it makes it very smooth movement, you know? So there's a way that we can use this in our script. So looking at our setting of our position, which is right here in our script underneath the OnDrag event, we can use, instead of just straight up, you know, jumping to it, we can use a vector 3 dot lerp. Okay? And what this is going to allow us to do is have kind of like a delay. So you're going to need two things for this to work. First, you're going to need to make changes to this section of the script to include this. Instead of just jumping to the position, we want to be lerping to the position. And the second thing you want is where you're going to want to have a private serialized field that's going to hold the time, the float of a time, that it will take for the card to reach its target. Okay? So that's your homework for the next lesson. If you're not sure how to use it, just look up how to use vector3.lerp, and I'm confident that you guys will figure it out. If you can't, you have trouble, jump into the Discord, talk it over with me. I'll be more than happy to help. And again, we will review it in the homework before the next video. That's all that I have for now. In our next video, we're going to be working on that arrow pointer that I talked about. Hopefully it'll be a little bit of a shorter video, and hopefully I can have it out by either the end of this week or early next week. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.